Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Wednesday, February the 26th, 2025. Today I want to have another look at Germany because we just had the elections, the federal elections on Sunday, and people seem to be very concerned about the results, even though they were completely as expected. The right-wing AfD party got 20%, approximately, again, as expected. And Alice Weidel, the co-leader of the AfD, she is not going to become Chancellor. She was never going to become Chancellor. But still, I thought I would look at the elections again and see what it says about the future of Alice Weidel and the AfD. But first of all, I want to consider the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Wednesday, February 26, 2025. Usual reminder, if you enjoy this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I would be really happy to have you as a subscriber because I need all the subscriptions I can get, or so I'm told, because it's good for the channel. So here is the chart for today, and the moon is still in Aquarius. It's at noon New York time. It's at 20 Aquarius, and it's making a trine to Jupiter. There's that trine, sort of particularly earlier in the day. So moon trine Jupiter, that's always a fortunate aspect to have. Jupiter is the planet of good fortune, and at the same time, the moon is making an aspect to it. So it could be a fortunate day, although it's quite a fleeting influence, that moon Jupiter trine, and the moon moves on to make a square to Uranus, and those two aspects, moon trine Jupiter, moon square Uranus, are essentially the main aspects of the day. We've had excitement this week. We've got a new moon in a couple of days' time, but right now, in terms of what is immediately going on, there isn't actually a great deal happening. So that is the broad picture. I mean, maybe that moon square Uranus is perhaps more important than moon trine Jupiter. Moon square Uranus can be about passing stubbornness, passing rebelliousness, but again, it's a fairly short-lived aspect, though maybe it's made more significant by the fact that actually, from a geocentric point of view, there isn't really a great deal going on today. And then we could look at that chart from the viewpoint of Australia. So noon New York time, the moon is at 2034 Aquarius. If we reset that to Sydney, Australia, at noon, the moon is earlier in the sign, the moon is at 11 degrees Aquarius. But that aspect between moon and Jupiter is closer, and so although all of us can benefit from that moon trine Jupiter, I do think that moon trine Jupiter is going to be stronger if you are in Australia and New Zealand, and that moon square Uranus is not going to be such a leading factor. So that might mean that in terms of differences between Australia and Australasia and the Americas, probably in Australasia, in Australia, New Zealand, East Asia, Philippines, Kamchatka, things are probably going to be easier, more straightforward, and might be a slightly luckier day because of the influence of that moon trine Jupiter. If you're in the Americas, it may be the case that the moon trine Jupiter is not quite so important, and it's more about the moon square Uranus. So there could be a little bit of instability there and stubbornness. People really holding on to what they believe in, and getting compromised might be hard work. Turning to the heliocentric picture, putting the sun in the center of the solar system. Now, one word about heliocentric charts. I had a commenter asking, why don't I emphasize signs in the heliocentric chart? My response to that question is that the heliocentric chart is somewhat impersonal, and it's not a system, heliocentric astrology, that people use very much. You could say that it's a little bit obscure, though it's quite sort of obvious. Sun is in the center of the solar system. But I'm inclined to just look at the aspects, because aspects are real, and with signs there's not really much of a track record of looking at signs in terms of heliocentric astrology, although I do believe that people who use heliocentric astrology, for example, for working out what's happening in the stock market, do use sign ingresses, and perhaps that's something I should be considering. But as far as the heliocentric chart, that of course is the heliocentric chart, but it is not really the heliocentric chart, because it has not been changed to the coordinates. There is the heliocentric chart. Sorry. Okay, so that is the heliocentric picture for today. God, I'm getting this wrong. That is not for today. That is the heliocentric picture for last week. So let me just get this. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, there we go. That's the heliocentric picture for today, and the Earth is at 8 Virgo, and it's still making a trine to Mercury. So we had a trine to Mercury yesterday, and you could say Earth in Virgo, trine Mercury in Taurus, and from a collective point of view, that could be about a connection with money, concerns about money. I think the commenter was indicating this, that this may say something about what's happening down here on Earth, that there are certainly a lot of things going on in the stock market. The stock market, there's a general feeling of concern, and cryptocurrencies have got completely hammered over the last couple of days. And I know that's supposed to be to do with tariffs, but that might just be to do with the fact that we're running into the geocentric conjunction between Mercury and Saturn. So Mercury conjunct Saturn, people have a very negative view of everything, maybe, and there's ideas about making a fortune from Bitcoin, where it's going down the pan now, and with Mercury conjunct Saturn, that's even worse, and that may be about perceptions. Of course, I don't know what's going on with cryptocurrencies. I don't know what's going to happen next, but that Mercury conjunct Saturn may be creating a certain amount of ill ease and a feeling that things are really bad, and that might be how Mercury conjunct Saturn geocentrically works. But this is a heliocentric chart, and with Earth in Virgo trine Mercury in Taurus, people are thinking a lot about what they have, what they don't have, and what they would perhaps like to have. And there is a silver lining here with this heliocentric chart, in the sense that Venus is moving to a sextile of Jupiter. So the two benefics in the heliocentric chart are making a fortunate aspect, and this is happening the day after an exact Mercury conjunct Saturn geocentrically. So maybe with the two benefics being in sextile to each other, there's going to be a sense of positivity. People are going to feel happier and more confident, and who knows if that will be reflected in the markets. But that Venus sextile Jupiter is there for the taking. So if today you're feeling a little bit negative, then remember, Venus is sextile Jupiter and heliocentrically. Can you make the most of it? Perhaps that's the invitation from the heliocentric chart. Things aren't so bad necessarily, and if you have a positive view, and if you can somehow channel the positivity of the cosmos with that Venus sextile Jupiter, then maybe it can feed through, and you might cheer up. Of course, cheer up assuming there was a problem in the first place, but you could argue, in fact, that there's not much going on geocentrically except Moon trine Jupiter, which is a fortunate aspect. And so given that Venus sextile Jupiter heliocentrically, we could say that is the main aspect of the day. Maybe that's what the day is going to all be about. So I would have said that there is something very positive that we can take from that chart. In fact, Venus is trine Chiron heliocentrically, and it's sextile Jupiter. So Venus trine Chiron, that's maybe an invitation to do things differently, to present things differently, to perhaps think about how we appear, in terms of clothing, style. And Venus trine Chiron wants to be different, and maybe we can be different. At the same time, Venus trine Chiron gives us the opportunity to help someone without much effort. It's a trine. It's all very easy, made even easier by the fact that Venus is trine Jupiter. So that's a heliocentric picture, and I would be inclined to just focus on that Venus Jupiter aspect. So let's now look at the 12 signs. So these are my forecasts for the 12 signs for today, which is Wednesday, February the 26th, 2025. Aries. Aries, there's no reason why it can't be a constructive day. There's nothing really to get in your way. I'm not saying it's going to be super exciting, but I think that it's a time when you can start to see that things are working. You can enjoy yourself, and you can enjoy other people's company. It's not a time for expecting, massive and spectacular events to happen. Okay, they might be happening out there in the world, but are they going to affect you personally? In most cases, probably not, especially if you don't do anything to initiate them. So, do enjoy other people's company and see what other people have got to offer. Perhaps also see what you have got to offer them. And in terms of saying stuff, you can be quite free in terms of your communication. Yesterday I talked about this conjunction between Mercury and Saturn, and for all of us, regardless of our sign, I think that Mercury-Saturn conjunction was rather a difficult influence and may have encouraged us to see things in the most negative way. But that Mercury-Saturn conjunction is now separating, and it's in fact, Mercury and Saturn now are 2 degrees apart. So Mercury is moving quickly, it would seem, and at the same time, you have this moon trine Jupiter replacing it. So the influence of Mercury conjunct Saturn is replaced by Moon trine Jupiter. So that does allow you to be more positive, and you can create positivity through the things you say, and you can cheer people up. You can persuade people that things aren't so bad. You've got to think about the future, and also in your various social contacts, you can up the pace in quite a big way if you want to. You can introduce yourself to people in a way that has some drama. Your entrances and may be somewhat dramatic, or at least you can make them dramatic. And that's what people want. This Mercury conjunct Saturn is losing its strength, and because of this, people are more willing to listen to you. And people are more willing to see that there are new ways of being, new ways of behaving, and in general that things are getting better. And so it's not in itself a day where there are external events which need to be managed, at least in your personal life. I think it's more about what you make of it and what you make of the human resources. So you could say, Aries, that that is pretty much all there is to be said. I mean, I don't think I need to say much more, but just use what is available, and really other people can be a real plus in your life, especially when we've got a heliocentric Venus sextile Jupiter. That Venus sextile Jupiter heliocentrically, is exact today, and because there's not much going on elsewhere aspect-wise, that Venus sextile Jupiter is especially strong, and that just may say something about other people and how they respond to you. They can respond to you in a very positive way if you give them a chance. Taurus, the moon is solidly in Aquarius, and with the moon in Aquarius, you're feeling that this is a time when you want to make an impact, and you feel that now might be your chance to make something happen. And the moon, while it's in Aquarius, is making a trine to Jupiter and a sextile to Uranus. So that trine between the moon and Jupiter, moon in Aquarius, trine Jupiter in Gemini, is an aspect that for you, Taurus, could be quite material, could actually be focusing on what you want and how you can go about achieving it. And there might be a financial element to the moon trine Jupiter, and so there might be an opportunity to get some extra money, or to engineer a situation in which you can financially benefit. Now, all of us are going to feel that moon trine Jupiter, but it's probably going to be stronger if you are in Australia or New Zealand or Eastern Asia. If you're in the Americas, that moon trine Jupiter may to an extent be receding into the past, but if you make a special effort to see the positives and to really concentrate on maximizing your benefit from any particular situation, especially financial benefit, I think that is something you can do. Now, the moon, having made a trine to Jupiter, it moves on to make a square to Uranus. And I would see that square to Uranus as potentially being quite positive, because the moon and Uranus are both in important angles in your chart. I mean, the moon is in Aquarius. Aquarius is a fixed sign, like Taurus, and so it's very prominent, that sign, Aquarius, and so it's hitting Uranus going through your sign, and so that gives you a chance to make things happen and to be someone who just gets attention. And if people aren't paying you attention, you know what to do, and you can do something dramatic. And if you're not happy with the way things are going, you have an opportunity to create some kind of change, just something you do, and it just can't be ignored. And if you want to be a rebel and to do things your own way, then with that moon square Uranus, I think you can probably get away with it. Now, as far as relationships are concerned, relationships could be a little bit complicated. there may be a feeling that other people are complicated. I mean, other people, they want to get close to you, but do you want to get close to them? And if you do get close to people, what is the consequence? What kind of baggage are people bringing? So that might apply not necessarily to the close relationships that you have all the time, but relationships that come and go, and relationships that you just feel that you have to consider. They may be short-term relationships, but if you don't know people, if you don't trust people, what are you taking on? And just because it's easy to get on with someone, just because the conversation is just very easy, doesn't mean to say that you want to have anything to do with them, because it's possible that something is being hidden, that behind another person's pleasantness is an agenda, or at worst, something that is just plain nasty. So Taurus, have a little bit of caution here, and don't make assumptions about other people's personalities and other people's motivations, because under the surface things might actually be quite difficult. Gemini, yesterday we had a conjunction between Mercury and Saturn. And this Mercury-Saturn conjunction was difficult. I think it could have been difficult. And there could have been quite a lot of negativity tied up with that Mercury-Saturn conjunction. And you may have felt that certain areas just weren't going to go well. There might even been a feeling that things were closing in on you with that Mercury conjunct Saturn. But that Mercury conjunct Saturn is moving away. It's losing its strength, and that means that there's greater scope for positivity, especially as the moon in Aquarius is making a trine to Jupiter in Gemini. So that trine is making you feel more confident and more aware of possibilities. I mean, you might have been aware of those possibilities yesterday, but they might have seemed like a million miles away, possibilities that were unattainable. But when you look at things again today, well, yes, things can happen. It's not actually so bad. And if you're prepared to sort of look beyond your immediate environment and look at the broader picture, then there might actually be considerable scope for optimism. But ideally, try not to do the same old things, because the same old things have reminders of the past, and you need to look at things in a different way. And if you do things and meet people that are somewhat unfamiliar, that remind you that there is a whole wide, exciting world out there, then I think that would certainly be good for your spirits. But don't feel that other people are going to go all the way. Other people can go a certain way, but they can't give you everything you want, because there is this sense that every relationship you're in has a limit, regardless of what that relationship is. So you have to understand what that limit is. You take from it what you can, and you realize that people are only human. They can only offer so much. So don't get overexcited by any one person or by what any one person has to offer. But things are certainly better than yesterday, and it's still another day when you can be very focused on what you want to do. Mercury is still conjunct Saturn, and the positive side of that Mercury conjunct Saturn is being able to consider the things that you want to achieve and being quite serious about it. And given what I've just said about understanding other people's limits, you perhaps need to take the various sort of resources around you, understand what you can do with them, and not take things too far, and always sort of keep your options open. I mean, that might seem a little bit callous, seeing other people as a means to an end. But if there are clear ambitions that are important to you, then you might have no choice, and you don't have to behave in a manipulative and immoral way. I mean, that's not necessary. And always, whatever you're doing, do think about the wider picture. It's easy to just focus on one thing and just achieving it, and that is the whole matter itself. But it's not. You have to think about the broader picture. But with the Moon trine Jupiter, I do think that is definitely something you can do. Cancer. The Moon is in Aquarius all day, and with the Moon in Aquarius, you may feel that it's a day when you need to take things a little bit easy. There's really no need to push yourself, and certainly no need to be pushed by the outside world or by other people. You have your ideas about the way things should work, and you should just follow these ideas through, and don't listen too hard to what anyone else is telling you. Now, the Moon makes two aspects today. The Moon makes a trine to Jupiter, and it makes a square to Uranus. Now, that Moon trine Jupiter is probably more a feature of early in the day, or more a feature if you're in Australia or New Zealand than if you're in the Americas. But still, it exists, it's there, and it is a fortunate aspect. But you have to understand that good fortune is not obvious. It's not out there in the busy, bustling world. You don't have to go out of your way to be lucky. You can be fortunate, right where you are. And if you can do things in a way that is, somewhat secretive, that's probably for the best. If you do things out in the open, you may feel that you're being hampered by other people's expectations, and you may just, not get to where you want to be, and that could be quite frustrating. But such frustrations are avoidable. Just take the view that you are responsible. You're responsible for everything, and it's all down to you. And that way you don't blame other people if things go wrong. And the Moon, having made that trine to Jupiter, moves on to make a square to Uranus. And that Moon square Uranus may be about some kind of realization. You see something, or you see someone for what it really is, and it may be a little bit of a surprise. And this would especially be the case if you were socializing, or if you're meeting people. And when you meet people, when you're with people, you might see something you absolutely weren't expecting, and that may force you to rethink things. And you can see things at the moment that other people can't see. And it may not be that anyone does anything dramatic. It's just small gestures which surprise you. They don't surprise anyone else, but they surprise you. And as a result of that, you may want to rethink things. And it may not be about a person. It may be about a situation. You go somewhere. You had a set of expectations, and you realize that things have changed. And as a result of that, everything changes, and you realize you need to do things differently. And perhaps you come to a conclusion that, certain places and certain people are really of the past, and you don't really need to involve yourself with them anymore. Leo, at the moment, you have a certain sense of excitement. It's a sort of mental excitement, and you feel that there's really something you want to say, and you want to say it, and you want to be heard, but the question is, do you have to say it? It may just be enough to realize it on its own, on your own. You realize it and you act on it, but do other people have to be involved? Will other people understand? And that is perhaps the important question. And so just because you have an inspiration doesn't mean that it's going to be easy to share it. And so you can try, you can try to talk about what's important to you. Some people might understand, but a lot of people might not understand. And so it might be that while there's a lot to say today, the things you talk about are not quite as exciting as you'd like them to be. And the moon is still in Aquarius, and that means that other people can't really be avoided. People have to be dealt with, and they seem to offer a lot, but to what extent can they deliver? I mean, the moon making a trine to Jupiter certainly indicates that other people are there for you, and other people can provide some interest, but I do think there's still going to be a certain sense of disappointment. But that disappointment would only happen if you had high expectations. If you realize that the really important work, especially on a mental level, is going to be done by you. You can't expect people to really understand fully what you are talking about. I mean, they may get the gist of it, but they're not going to understand the real importance of a message in the same way that you do. So, allow yourself to be excited, but don't feel that you have to discuss it. In fact, if you are really excited about something and you try to verbalize it and you try to explain it to another person, their lack of comprehension might be quite dispiriting. You feel you had something really interesting to say, but you don't get the feedback you were looking for. And that might be deflating. So perhaps the important things, the things you really, really want to say, you should, for the moment at least, you should perhaps keep them to yourself. Virgo, it is a day when you should try to make things as straightforward as possible. And to an extent, Virgo, today is about creating order. I mean, order is good, and you are in a position where you can create an environment in which you can function properly, and that's always important for a Gemini. Always important for a Virgo. And the moon in Aquarius is making a trine to Jupiter in Gemini, and with that trine, I would have said that you really can get things together. If you're working, you can have a great day, especially in Australia or New Zealand, where that moon trine Jupiter is going to be strongest. But even if you're in the Americas, you still got the moon is in Aquarius. It's making it's got a fortunate relationship to Jupiter in Gemini, so that does allow you to get things together, and if you've got a particular idea about the way things should come together, then it will work. Now, you might think that other people can be useful if you were to share your ideas with them, if you were to get their help, but I'm not convinced. I think it's quite possible that people are going to be slower than usual, and there are going to be limits to what they're prepared to do for you and limits to what they're prepared to share. And so, because of that slowness, and might strike you as being somewhat mean-spirited. They're not. People aren't really being mean. That's not the case. It's just that they're actually being a bit sluggish, and they feel that that they have their own business to sort out, and also there may be a certain fear of change. So don't have big expectations about what people can do for you. Instead, work it out for yourself. I mean, if you do get help from other people, that would be great, but don't assume it. And also remember that Mercury is making a conjunction to Saturn. Now, that Mercury conjunct Saturn was at peak strength yesterday, so that Mercury-Saturn conjunction is starting to fade, but it's still there. And with that Mercury-Saturn conjunction, it's just important that you don't over-interpret other people's sluggish behavior, or the world seeming to be a little bit unresponsive. Don't over-interpret it. It's just something that is passing, and things will move on. And so have a plan today. Keep it simple. You can achieve what's important for you, and it'll be easy. And if other people are not involved, that might be better, because then you can take full responsibility for everything. Libra. It's a day when the moon continues moving through Aquarius, and it's making a trine to Jupiter. So that moon trine Jupiter works in your favour, and because we kind of have a sort of a grand trine formation here, because moon is in an air sign, Aquarius, Jupiter's in an air sign, Gemini, and the third air sign is of course Libra. And so you directly benefit from that moon trine Jupiter, and things can happen your way. Things are going to be moving for you. They may not be moving for other people, but does that matter? You yourself should be feeling quietly satisfied with the way things are going, and if you want to do something that's special for you, may not be special for anyone else, then go ahead. It will be satisfying, quietly satisfying, though don't have too many expectations. I'm saying that to a lot of people. It is a day when we shouldn't, by and large, have expectations, regardless of our sign. Now, as far as relationships are concerned, it might be a day when you feel that you want to be close to people. I mean, Venus is still in Aries. Venus is in Aries, your opposite sign. So this is a time when relationships do matter. But you have to ask yourself whether it's worth it, and what actually are you taking on. I mean, in terms of relationships that are around all the time, the really close relationships in your life, there's probably not much to be concerned about. But other relationships which perhaps have just started, which are developing, they could be a little bit treacherous. People can be, keen to get on with you. They can seem, very sociable and warm and open, but there's some danger that you get misled. People aren't being entirely open about what they really want and what their real agenda is, and that might be the question you always have to ask. What does this person want? Who benefits? And why are they being so accommodating and friendly? I mean, this is of course especially the case if money is involved. What is the fee? What is the commission? And do they really care about you? And so do ask yourself these questions, because some Librans can be overly trusting. They can take people at face value. Libra is a sign of the balance. You want to balance with the rest of the world. You don't want to cause upset. You don't want to say no. And as a result, there are people out there who could trip you up. And so don't get carried away by what any one person says. Try to look at things from a slightly suspicious angle. It's okay to be suspicious. I mean, what harm is it in being suspicious? It could be you're wrong, but it's always good to consider, what could happen. And so overall, Libra, it is a day when you do need to concentrate on yourself. You don't actually need other people. Other people might try to persuade you that you need them, but you don't actually need them. And so that's probably about it. Scorpio, you are fairly enthusiastic about some things. Some things you regard as being worth putting your energy into. And once you decide that you're going to throw your energy into something, you can give it everything you've got. And that can be very impressive. Once you and another person are, on the same wavelength, engaged with the same thing, then things can really start to happen. And you might find that there are various relationships in your life, or at least the relationships that are relevant for today, that come up today. Things do change quickly, and you're not in the mood for hanging around. You're not in the mood for guessing games. You want to know what's going on. So there's something about you, Scorpio, that is really straightforward and direct, and at the same time, you want to know what the consequences are. That's going to be important. So anyone in your life, you're asking yourself, what's this person there for? What can they change? Are they going to make things better, or maybe they're going to make things worse? And underlying all of that is your desire for a modicum of stability. Stability is something that you put a sort of high premium on at the moment. I mean, you have been, ever since yesterday, day before, when Moon started moving into Aquarius. So with Moon moving into Aquarius, you want to make sure that everything is straightforward, and you want people to be open and honest, and that's what you want. And if you feel that anyone is hiding something, then you're going to be worried about, where is it going, and what is the risk, what is the threat. So that's probably your main priority today. And the moon does make a square to Uranus, and that moon square Uranus could be about something happening that you hadn't fully expected, or you becoming aware of something, and it could be unsettling, especially now when you're putting such a high premium on security. But it's important, Scorpio, that you don't overreact. Yeah, it is easy to overreact today, but if something happens that you weren't expecting, really, your first impulse should be to try to work out what actually is going on, and don't be afraid to ask questions. And when you ask a few questions, things might become more straightforward. And also, there is this conjunction between Mercury and Saturn. Though that Mercury conjunct Saturn was exact yesterday, it's still around today. And with Mercury conjunct Saturn, it just may be a time, Scorpio, when you should be relying on yourself. And I was, very positive about that Mercury-Saturn conjunction yesterday, and that positivity continues. It's about you being able to benefit from who you are. And if you do what you're good at, if you do what you've been put on this planet for, and you follow your destiny with that Mercury conjunct Saturn, and that's especially the case when it comes to using your special talents, the abilities that you've been given. You could say your God-given abilities. If you use them, then you'll be fine, and you don't have to worry about security, whether things are going to turn out right. If you do what matters, if you do what destiny wants, then the universe is going to protect you, isn't it? Sagittarius, it's a day when actually not a lot is going on, and this is reflected by my forecasts for all of the 12 signs. If you've been listening to my forecasts for the 12 signs, they've been a lot briefer than usual, because really there isn't much going on. And as far as you're concerned, we could say that the main aspect is Venus sextile Jupiter heliocentrically. So there is this heliocentric Venus-Jupiter sextile, and I regard that Venus sextile Jupiter as being a fortunate aspect, which will allow you to be yourself and just come over as just a nice person. And of all the 12 signs today, you're probably the most extroverted and confident, perhaps because of that Venus sextile Jupiter. Additionally, geocentrically, the moon is making a trine to Jupiter. You've got moon in Aquarius, trine Jupiter in Gemini. And there's something about you that seems interesting, and you've got lots of interesting things to say, and it may be a time when you can tell stories. If you want to tell a story, if you want to talk about some recent event that's happened to you, and you want to tell people about it and inject it with plenty of humor, you can get everyone's attention. So Sagittarius, you really can get things. You can be the center of things, and people are going to like you, and your various relationships should work pretty well. Again, you're not a threat, and that's really good. You don't appear to be a threat, and you can get people to be more positive than they have been of late. Because remember, we've still got this conjunction between Mercury and Saturn, and this conjunction between Mercury and Saturn is making a lot of people feel quite negative. There is this Mercury conjunct Saturn. Maybe it's affecting me. I mean, I'm doing this recording on a Tuesday when the Mercury conjunct Saturn is exact. I'm a Gemini. Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, so maybe I'm saying less than usual because Mercury is conjunct Saturn. Although I don't really see that there's a great deal going on astrologically. But if you've got people still influenced by this conjunction between Mercury and Saturn, you can go some way towards cheering them up, making them feel more positive about what is possible, and you can actually be quite a good example. You can demonstrate, Sagittarius, how resourceful you are, and all these different skills that you have. You'll have no difficulty presenting them, and you can present them with energy and enthusiasm, and I think people are going to be impressed. And if it is important to impress someone, maybe you've got an interview, you're looking for a job, or you're trying to get new responsibilities, now might be the time to show the world what you can do. Capricorn, the moon continues moving through Aquarius, and while the moon is in Aquarius, it makes a trine to Jupiter, and then it makes a square to Uranus. And this moon-Jupiter trine is maybe not especially exciting, but I would have said that it can be quite useful. It allows you to concentrate on the things that matter, and in terms of money, it does seem that your own careful preparations can actually make a big difference. So if you are well prepared and you think perhaps about what you might be owed and how you might be able to get what is owed to you, and you're ready to make your demands at the right time, then there's a good chance that you can get the money, if anyone owes you money. Or if there's extra money that is available, you get it through being well prepared. And it might be a time where you need to think about forms. So perhaps you need to apply for money. And maybe there's some form that you need to sort out now, and it might seem to be a little bit tedious, but you just do the form or you do the application. It's just a piece of paperwork, and it does make a difference. Financially, it may save you money, it might make you money, but it could be just about dealing with a bureaucracy, and you do it, and you don't get the money straight away, but the wheels turn, and eventually you've done something very useful, and you profit. So money can be made today, but in a way that is unspectacular, and doesn't have to be spoken about. It's just there. You just do what's required of you. I know that sounds a little boring, but so what? If the money eventually comes in. The moon also makes a square to Uranus, and that's a little bit different to the trine to Jupiter. It could also have a financial nature, that square to Uranus, but maybe in not quite such an easy way. Moon square Uranus can be a surprise. It can be something you realize that you didn't want to realize, but you see the truth of the matter, and it might be about the price of something. Or it might be that you realize someone wants money out of you, and you didn't realize they wanted money out of you, but now you get it. You can you can act accordingly. So other people can be surprising, and they can make demands that you weren't expecting. Well, you're not really in such a bad situation now, because I've just told you, I've told you that it can happen. So it may not be unexpected demands, but if you're told something and you're asked for something, then you need to be prepared, and you can be prepared, because right now Capricorns, in some respects, are ready for anything. And there is a different thing going on as well, Capricorn. Money aside, you seem to be strangely optimistic today. You seem to think that things are actually working in your favor, that something is looking after you, and that it's all going to be fine. And normally that wouldn't be such a good thing, because if you're just optimistic for no reason at all, well, aren't you just heading for disappointment? But I think in this case, Capricorn, you do understand that things are starting to move your way, and you can feel it, you can see it. At least you can see it, I don't know, with your third eye, but you can't necessarily see it directly. But there is this growing sense of optimism, and you might be tempted to sort of try to bring yourself back down to reality and say, no, this is not possible. But I think it is possible. You're a Capricorn. You can be realistic, but you can also be optimistic about the future, and you can perhaps also believe that there is something out there that is looking after you and does actually want you to be successful. Aquarius. Moon is continuing to move through your sign, and the moon in Aquarius does make a trine to Jupiter. And this trine to Jupiter, I would have said, was entirely fortunate. It allows you to make the most of what you've got, and it also allows you to be happy. I mean, happiness in this world right now could be a rare commodity, especially as we've just had this Mercury conjunct Saturn, which was exact yesterday. And so this Mercury conjunct Saturn has made some people rather grim and maybe over realistic, thinking, oh, this is all looking difficult. Is there anything to be happy about? Well, if you're an Aquarius, you're feeling that things are okay, and you have a sense of your own power, and you're also just aware that there are lots of different possibilities, and you know that you have what it takes, and that means that you might be facing a challenge that might be difficult. It might appear even impossible, that some people just can't do it, and you've got what it takes. And it's not just about knowledge, as in just knowing that you've got the skills and knowing about it on paper. You have a certain amount of self-belief, and the self-belief may not be entirely logical, but it's real. And so if you attempt something which might on the surface seem impossible, you might actually be able to make it happen. And of course, I'm not talking about doing anything dangerous where you risk life or limb or you risk money. I'm not talking about that. But if you think you've got a chance, then you probably have got a chance. And so do be optimistic. It may actually even be okay to be apparently over optimistic, and other people might not have much faith, much belief that things can really happen. But yeah, you can make them happen. You do have what it takes. Now, there is also a square aspect between the moon and Uranus. So that moon-Uranus aspect is probably more towards sort of the end of the day, more of a factor if you're in the Americas, if you're in, say, Australia or New Zealand. But that moon square Uranus could be a little bit destabilizing, or at least it may threaten to be destabilizing. And it may be a clash between, what you want and what other people want, and in particular, I'm talking about your family and people you have to deal with in a sort of a domestic setting, and they may try to hold you back. And this is a situation you have to negotiate, and you should need to remember what I've been talking about sort of earlier. You are in a good position. You can make things happen. You shouldn't allow other people's doubts and concerns to hold you back. Yeah, sure, listen to what people say. If people think that you're doing something crazy, well, listen to what they're saying, and maybe they've got a point. But you shouldn't be in a situation where you should feel restricted, because it's not that kind of time, Aquarius. Pisces. From a heliocentric point of view, we see a sextile between Venus and Jupiter. And Jupiter is your ruler, and Venus is a fortunate planet. It's making a sextile to Jupiter. So I'm quite optimistic about the possibilities for today with this Venus sextile Jupiter. Venus, okay, it's a planet of relationships, but it's also just a planet of good fortune. It's the minor benefic, and of course Jupiter is the major benefic. So, with this Venus-Jupiter sextile, I think that you can be given a real lift. But you might have to look for it, because this is a heliocentric aspect. It's not a geocentric aspect. I kind of take the view that geocentric aspects are more available, because geocentric is how we see the planet from our own viewpoint, from the planet Earth. The heliocentric aspects are from a viewpoint of the sun, and so that Venus-Jupiter sextile may be available to us, but we might have to look for it. And so Pisces, you need to make a special effort, to be positive, and also to see the best in things. And particularly as we're dealing with Venus, it's about seeing the best in other people. And that might mean that you have to be a little bit persuasive. You shouldn't, take people at face value. You can consider, how you can have an influence on them, and encourage them, and, be supportive. And if you can do that, Pisces, then I think that you could be, very pleased with the results. And at the same time, you come over as being a serious person, serious in a nice way, with Mercury making a conjunction to Saturn. Okay, that conjunction is not exact today; it was exact yesterday, but still, Mercury's conjunct Saturn in Pisces. So you come over with a certain amount of gravitas. You're someone who takes the world seriously. You take yourself seriously. You take other people seriously, and with that Mercury conjunct Saturn, I think in many cases people are prepared to trust you. And another reason they're prepared to trust you is because you're not trying too hard to force the agenda. It's not about what you want all the time. you're trying to make some effort to understand what other people want without compromising anything. And so you can be a very supportive person, but also someone who is very, very conscious of their own self-interest. Mercury is conjunct Saturn in Pisces, as I've just said. You understand what's important to you, but you also understand what's important to other people. And it's probably a time, Pisces, when you take a rather collaborative view of the world. It's not about winners and losers right now. It's about people supporting each other. And if you're happy, everyone else is happy. And it's perhaps about people having sort of dependence on each other. We can't function as isolated individuals. At least we can't function well as isolated individuals, at least from a Piscean perspective today. People have to help each other. And if you can look at things from a sort of a collective viewpoint, that would be good. And it's about not having too much of an ego, and you don't at the moment. You're able to get a good sense of perspective there, and people don't find you threatening. So you're an easy person to get on with, but at the same time you are taken seriously, and that does mean that that it can be actually quite a good day. And also the moon is making a trine to Jupiter, and that moon trine Jupiter is a very stabilizing trine. It allows you to calm things down. It allows you to focus on what you want and look after your own fundamental needs without it being a zero-sum situation. As I've already said, it's not about your needs being more important than someone else's needs. It's about your needs and other people's needs. They're all complementary. And with this universal approach, Pisces, I think that you'll be attracting plenty of good luck today. And those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. Much briefer than usual. I think that's because there's not so much to say. Astrologically, there's hardly anything going on immediately today. And so that's why I've been perhaps briefer than usual, but it might also be because we've got Mercury conjunct Saturn and I'm a Gemini, and perhaps Saturn is close to my ruler. If you take the Sun in Gemini, I've also got Taurus rising, but maybe Saturn is restricting what I say, restricting how I come out with the words. But anyway, let's look at today from a different perspective, and that is the perspective of the I Ching. So I asked the question, what is Wednesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was hexagram number 37, which is the family. The family is not a particularly exciting hexagram, but do we want excitement? I don't think we do. It's a hexagram which is about stability, and it's a very traditional hexagram. And we mustn't forget that the I Ching is a Confucian oracle, and it's about hierarchies and structure, and the family is a microcosm for the state. And in the family you have traditional roles: mother, father, oldest son, youngest son, oldest daughter, youngest daughter. It's all there in order, and if you maintain that order, then everything is fine, and the state should be constructed like that. Now, you might disagree with that, but again, we have to remember that this is a Confucian oracle, and So today, it's probably a good idea to respect that established order, even if you don't necessarily agree with it. Of course, when I say established order, it's all relative, isn't it? It's, whatever hierarchy you are part of, whatever group you are part of. It might be a family, it could be a group of friends, it could be something going on at work, but do respect that hierarchy and recognize that different people have their roles, and the fifth line moves, and the fifth line is talking about the father, and a father who is beneficent, is a force for good, who is supportive of the family. And again, let's not worry too much about gender. I mean, father is of course a masculine figure, that's what the I Ching says, but I think we have to translate that as someone who has natural authority regardless of their genders. And it could be mother, it could be someone else, but someone who has natural authority. Everyone respects that authority, and it's about someone who comes in and makes sure that everything is fine. Someone who can't do any harm because of their position in the hierarchy. So that's the hexagram for today. So it's not a time for being a rebel. It's not a time for doing things differently. It's for taking what works, what you are a member of. It might seem boring if you are stuck in a particular structure, but that structure may be holding things together. Now, maybe at a later date you might want to break free from this structure, but today it's not a time for rebellion, even though one aspect we have today is Moon square Uranus, Moon in Aquarius square Uranus in Taurus, but it's a stressful aspect, and perhaps this hexagram is asking us or telling us not to get too hung up on this Moon square Uranus. We might feel we want to rebel, we might feel we want to do things differently, but we might want to do something to break down that structure, to challenge the hierarchy. Maybe at a later date, but not today, with the family as the first hexagram. And we've got the fifth line moving, and so that means that the hexagram does move, and what it moves to is hexagram number 22, which is grace. And grace is another hexagram which is pretty uneventful. It's not about doing anything dramatic. It's about appearances. We want to be harmonious. We want to create an environment where everyone gets on with each other. We might know that under the surface there are things going on which have to be addressed, that things have to be changed one day, but not today. Grace is all about appearances, going through the motions, and it might be, for example, that we feel that we want to be rebellious. We might feel that we want to, tell people, what's on our mind, and we just have to just keep quiet. It's a time for doing things on the surface, and surface appearances are what matters. I mean, I know that sounds really trivial, but right now that's the way it is. And so just don't rock the boat, and do what's expected of you, and save your bold words and your rebellious actions for another day. And now I want to go back to Germany. And my apologies, I've just talked about Germany. It's not even a subject I know very much about, but there is the astrology of Germany, and we have had these elections. And as far as these elections are concerned, I think that they were pretty much as expected. A lot of people are getting upset about the fact that the AfD got 20% of the vote, but 20% of the vote, 80% of people didn't vote for AfD. There's always going to be 20% of the population who maybe want heavy restrictions on immigration, who want to leave the European Union, don't regard Russia as being the biggest threat there is. So there's always going to be 20% of people who are going to think like that. I would have thought at least 20%, but in Germany it is 20%, and 80% of the German population voted for someone else. So, is it a big deal, this election? And I just wanted to have another look at some of the charts which I think might be relevant. And one chart I wanted to start with is a chart that I do think is really important, and it's not specifically about the election, but it's about Germany, and it's about the whole world actually, and it's about the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction happens every 20 years, and so December the 21st, 2020, 6:20 p.m., there was a conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter and Saturn are the great chronocrators, the rulers of time. And so if we want to understand the times in which we are living, then we need to look at that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And it's not something that is a one-day wonder. If I was doing a recording on December the 21st, I talk about Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Oh, that's interesting. That says something about today. Let's move on. No, this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is a long-lasting event, and we are concerned about Germany. At least some people are concerned about Germany. Germany is an important country. It sometimes dominates the European continent, at least it has done occasionally in the last 150 years odd. So this is the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction set for Berlin. And if you set the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction for Berlin, the capital of Germany, you see that Mars is conjunct the midheaven, and that Mars on the midheaven is very dynamic. It's Mars in Aries conjunct the midheaven. Now that Mars on the midheaven would be going right through the European continent. Actually, I should probably set up an astro map just to illustrate what I mean. So here is. Okay, so if we when that Uranus midheaven conjunction, when that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction was exact at the end of 2020, this is a picture for Europe, and so the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction was on descendant in London, and it was on the midheaven, going through Western Poland, but it was pretty close to Berlin, and it was going through the midheaven, going right through Ukraine. So that Mars midheaven tells us something about that conjunction, and it's still with us. There are things going on with Germany. Germany is maybe not comfortable with itself, but it's also capable of changing the pace with Mars conjunct the midheaven. Remembering that this conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn happened in 2020. We're still at the beginning of this cycle. We've just had Jupiter-Saturn square. So this cycle, starting in 2020, is only just starting to reveal itself. And I think it's in June that we have we've got a Jupiter-Saturn square on and off, because Jupiter and Saturn are going retrograde and direct, but the final Jupiter-Saturn square, with the new moon, the first quarter square when the cycle really starts to reveal itself is this summer. And so that's the first point to make about this, about Jupiter on the midheaven. There's also the ascendant midheaven midpoint, and I just wanted to look at this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction again set for Berlin, and look at some of the midpoints shown in this 90-degree dial, and so because it's Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, so obviously Jupiter-Saturn are in exactly the same place as each other. There is a conjunction, and so set for Berlin, Jupiter and Saturn are on the ascendant midheaven midpoint. So the ascendant and the midheaven, they are the time and the place. So that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction really hits Germany directly. Germany is really feeling that change in the collective represented by the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. I mean, a lot of places are feeling it, and I've already said that in a previous video that if you set that chart for the UK, for London, that Jupiter and Saturn is on the descendant. I do see that Jupiter-Saturn on a descendant as being symbolic of Britain's long-term decline. I think you could say that every time there is a world war, Britain declines a little bit, as though the First World War was a real hammer blow to Britain's power and influence. The Second World War was an even bigger hammer blow. That's when the UK, the America took over after the Second World War. The pound was no longer the reserve currency, and finally the Ukraine war is going to be the final thing that really destroys Britain. I think that's certainly Britain. I mean, that seems to be what's happening, and seems to be a certain madness about European countries and how they're obsessed with Ukraine, and it's destroying them. Certainly destroying Britain. I think this is pretty much the end of Britain as a serious country. I mean, it'll always be a country, but it won't be the same in a few years' time. And so, anyway, this is Germany, and the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is on the ascendant midheaven midpoint. It's also, this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is on the Mars-Uranus midpoint, and it's on the Uranus-Pluto midpoint. So there's the Mars-Uranus midpoint, and it's because there's a Mars-Pluto aspect. So it's a dramatic thing, this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. Anyway, I mean, this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction is going to be on a Mars-Uranus midpoint everywhere. But set for Berlin, it's going to be because it's on the ascendant midheaven midpoint. It really does hit Germany, and so I think that Germany has only just started to experience this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And as far as what is happening with Germany, I think it might be important to take things back. What is the German chart? We've looked at the German chart for unification when the wall fell down, and certainly that is one chart we might be justified in looking at. So this is German unification. It's set for Berlin, October the 3rd, midnight, 1990. But what about an earlier chart? Is this the only chart we should be looking at? Should we also be considering the chart when the German Empire was declared? Now, you could say, well, there's no German Empire. I mean, it's gone. But it was an important beginning for Germany. I would have said that this chart does have some merit. And so January the 18th, 1871 in Versailles, I think that would have been just after the Franco-Prussian War, the German Empire was declared. And so maybe this chart is relevant. Now, I've got one in the afternoon. Several sources say that it was declared at 1 in the afternoon. I don't know whether it was really declared at 1 in the afternoon, but if that's the case, then we see that Venus is on the midheaven. And how do you read that Venus on the midheaven? Venus, as I've said, is the planet of victory. So you can see this this big statement. This is the German Empire. This is, William I. He's the Emperor of Germany. He's the Kaiser, and Venus is there. But Venus may also represent potential. Venus is a feminine planet, and so why is it there? And can it really be treated as a feminine planet, or is Venus just a planet of war? In certain civilizations, Venus has been treated as a planet of war, and that might simply represent the warlike nature of Germany. Venus on the midheaven, and that might just be all there is to say about it. And if we take 1 p.m. also we've got Jupiter in Gemini, and so Jupiter in Gemini has Jupiter in Gemini is relevant because it's potentially so close to the ascendant. Of course, Jupiter is in Gemini right now in 2025. Now, does this chart work? So you could look at a big event in German history and say, well, how relevant is that chart? So one relevant event might be, for example, when Hitler came to power, the moment Hitler came to power. So, what kind of transits did the German Empire have when, even though the German Empire didn't exist? I mean, the German Empire didn't exist after 1918, after the First World War, but maybe this chart is still relevant. And so, if we put the German Empire in the middle, and we put Nazi Germany on the outer wheel, at the time that Hitler came to power on January the 30th, 1933, Saturn was at 7:30 Aquarius. So that means that the German Empire has its Venus at 7 Aquarius, on the midheaven potentially, if it was a 1 o'clock in the afternoon birth. So Saturn was certainly conjunct with German Empire's Venus, and it was possibly conjunct the German Empire's midheaven. And this is a heavy event and a transformative event, and it's transforming Germany, and what Germany actually became, and what actually transforming the fundamental nature of Germany. So it does seem that this German Empire chart would appear still to be functional. And so, there is then the question, can we look at the German Empire chart right now in terms of what is going on now? And if you look at the transits to the German Empire chart at the time of the election, so here are the federal elections, and if we compare if we look at what transits the German Empire chart was experiencing at the time of the elections, then if we take 11 Gemini as the rising degree of the German Empire, Jupiter was crossing the ascendant. Now you could say that that's quite fortunate, that something is maybe coming to life here with these elections. Quite what we don't really know. But if we go back to the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, this is early days. The square we've just had Jupiter-Saturn square. We've just had that chart, and so we may start to see how it's all going to develop pretty soon. Now we've got that Jupiter square Saturn, and one of the worries people have is is Germany going to return to Nazism? And people talk about that. People put videos up. They're really worried about these election results, even though the AfD, a right-wing party. I don't even know if it's a far right-wing party. I don't know. Some people say it's a far right-wing party. Other people just say it's a right-wing party. I mean, Elon Musk is very supportive about AfD. I mean, would Elon Musk be supporting a far right-wing, a far right party? But there are these concerns. So, is that possible? Of course, the reality is, if you look at if you look at the Nazis in the 1920s, the Nazis didn't really poll well. If you looked at the elections through the 1920s, they didn't do well. I think in the 1928 election, just before the Great Recession, they were hardly getting any votes at all. But what changed everything was the economy. Now, the German economy has been doing badly for some time, but if the economy gets itself together, then there's no way in which the AfD could take power. And there's no way that any other party that might be further right from the AfD, there's no way they could take power unless the economy collapses. I mean, that is the reality of the thing. I'm not saying that because of astrology. It's obvious. If the economy is fine, then it'll be okay. People talking about the UK and reform, or France and a national rally, they may be doing well, but unless the economy completely collapses, these parties, I don't believe, are going to ever form a government. But maybe the economy will collapse. I mean, that's a different matter. And as far as these elections are concerned, I looked at these elections before, quite recently, a few days ago. And what struck me about what was going on with these elections was just the way Venus kept cropping up. And remember, if we take the German Empire, January the 18th, 1871, and assuming it really is at 1 p.m., Venus was on the midheaven. And in the run-up to the election, we saw Venus on the midheaven in quite a few charts. So we had the full moon before the election, again set for Berlin, where Venus was on the midheaven, and so it's a very Venus-like time. Venus on the midheaven. Does Venus represent power, victory? Victory for who? There's always going to be a victor, I think, when you've got an election. I mean, Merz's party, the Christian Democrats, got the most votes. He's going to be Chancellor, so he's going to be the victor. But Venus is a female planet, and we should not forget that. And again, if you go back to the halfway point between the equinox that is coming up next month and the solstice in last December, that halfway point when the sun is at 15 Aquarius, again in this chart, Venus is on the midheaven, very closely on the midheaven. So there is this Venus midheaven signature of women, potentially women and power. Of course, we know that Sahra Wagenknecht and the AfD, they only got 20% of the vote. They're not going to be in power. They're going to be frozen out of government. The other prominent woman or one of the prominent women in German politics was Sahra Wagenknecht. So Sahra Wagenknecht, if you look at her chart, I don't have her time of birth, her party did not do well. I think they got 4.97% of a vote or something like that. They needed to get 5% to get any any members of parliament in the Federal Assembly, and they just missed it. I think they missed it by 13,000 votes. So it hasn't been great for her, and I think she has her Mercury, and as I pointed out, she had her Mercury a few days ago. She has her Mercury at 16 degrees 30 Cancer. So Mars went stationary direct at 17.1 Cancer. So Mars went stationary direct right on her Mercury. So that is really very frustrating for her, and that's probably how she feels. And I did get that feeling when I looked at her chart a few days ago that maybe her party, the Bund Sahra Wagenknecht wouldn't reach that 5% threshold. And then we have Alice Weidel, and I said I'd look at her chart again, and so I'm looking at. That's indeed what I'm doing, and what's actually happening with Alice Weidel. So if we look at the transits that Alice Weidel is experiencing at the moment. Remember, with Alice Weidel, we don't have a time of birth for Alice Weidel. So that does make things difficult. Maybe the time of birth will eventually come out, but at the moment we don't know. As I've already pointed out, when the ballot boxes in Germany opened at 8 in the morning on the 23rd, the midheaven was at 1 degree 39 Capricorn in Berlin, and Alice Weidel's Venus is at 1 degree 11 Capricorn. So there is a sort of Venus midheaven feel to what she was experiencing at the time the ballot boxes opened. Additionally, although we don't have her time of birth, we can say that her moon is in mid-Gemini and Jupiter is going through Gemini. So there's a fair chance that she's got Jupiter aspecting her moon at the moment. So in a female chart in particular, having Jupiter on the moon is certainly significant. And then there are Alice Weidel's solar arc direction. So she is, how old is she? She's just turned 46, and so if we move all her planets 46 degrees, we can look at her solar arc directions, and with her solar arc directions, her solar arc directed Mars is at 29 degrees 20 Pisces, approximately. Again, we don't have her time of birth. And so she had Mars at 13, in her natal chart at 13.8 Aquarius, and Mars is moving forward. So Mars is... thing is, Mars is coming up to the Aries point, and she's got a load of planets crossing the Aries point. So she's got this Sun Mercury Mars conjunction in Aquarius, and these planets, we move them 45, 46 degrees they all cross the Aries point. So her Sun, a few years ago, her Sun crossed the Aries point, and that was perhaps a time when she got really prominent. People have heard of her. I've heard of her. So if I've heard of her, there must be lots of other people who've heard of her. So that's the Sun crossing Aries. Mercury moves into Aries, so crosses the Aries point. This is again a time when she is able to communicate on a world stage. People like Elon Musk want to talk to her. Mercury moving into Aries. And then Mars. Mars has not yet crossed the Aries point, but it is about to cross the Aries point over the next year. We don't know exactly when, but as Mars crosses the Aries point, remember the Aries point is the world point. It's very collective. And so if you're a politician and you've got planets crossing the Aries point, could really propel you into the limelight. And this seems to be what is happening with these directions. And so that's a few points about her transits and her directions. One thing, though, I did notice was her relationship to the German Empire. Now, it's not immediately obvious, but what I did, because I don't have a time of birth for Alice Weidel, and that is so frustrating, not having a time of birth, is that you can potentially create a new moon. No, that's a wrong chart. Sorry. If we look at if we can potentially look at the new moon before her birth. So you can see that Alice Weidel's moon was at 50 when she was born, was in Gemini, and there's her sun at 17 Aquarius. So we can start to consider the full moon before she was born, and so the new moon before she was born. And if you're dealing with a politician, that might be a reasonable thing to do. You know, what impact does this person have on Germany? And so this is a new moon before she was born. It was at 7 degrees 44 Aquarius, and it's a powerful chart, not least because we've got a midheaven at 2236 Scorpio. So she has got Uranus on the midheaven. So let me rephrase it. It's not that she has got Uranus on the midheaven. It's that the new moon before she was born, this is what Germany was getting ready for. So just before she was born, there was this new moon. We've set this for her place of birth. Uranus was on the midheaven, and this new moon was at 7:44 Aquarius. And so there is drama here because of that Uranus on the midheaven. Also because of that new moon at 7 degrees 44 Aquarius. So, what is the significance of 7 degrees 44 Aquarius? Well, the significance of 7:44 degrees Aquarius is what we've just been discussing. At 7:44 degrees Aquarius is if we look at the horoscope of the German Empire, at that time when it was declared, Venus was at 7:53 Aquarius, close to the midheaven. So that new moon was hitting the German Empire's Venus, and so we go back to this Venus on the midheaven, German Empire. We've had the full moon before the German elections, Venus on the midheaven, and we've had loads of Venus on the midheaven signs, almost like omens. And so when you look at all these charts together, I'm thinking that one should not underestimate Alice Weidel. I mean, logically, if I would look at this logically, forget the astrology, the way things work, right-wing parties like the AfD, they get a lot of prominence and then they split. It always happens. People have arguments with each other and then they just disappear. I'm thinking no. I'm not saying that Alice Weidel will necessarily ever become Chancellor of Germany, but I don't think that she should be underestimated. And of course, as I said at the beginning, it's all about the economy, isn't it? So if the German economy prospers, people won't vote for AfD. 20% will be their high watermark. Of course, if the German economy collapses, I mean, it does look as if with this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, Germany is in the spotlight. But maybe Merz will get it together, but maybe not. And I just do think that we shouldn't underestimate Alice Weidel. I think that I don't think she's going away. And from what I've seen so far, without looking at her time chart, I think there is a good chance that her position is going to get stronger. And will she become Chancellor one day? I wouldn't dismiss that possibility. Anyway, those are some further thoughts on the election, on the German election. I'm sorry this video was a bit brief. My forecasts for the 12 signs were very brief, but I didn't feel I had much to say. But maybe I was being influenced by the conjunction between Mercury and Saturn. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be super grateful if you were to subscribe. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. And I will talk to you again tomorrow.